Welcome back to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. This is the podcast that features me, Jana Stern, psychic activator, energy healer, and astrologer, as I delve into deep conversations with different folks in the holistic and conscious industries about the many beliefs and practices of spirituality, mental health, and what it means to be a human who's into that stuff in the 2020s and beyond. I'm Really Into That Stuff is excited to tell you that we have won one of the top 10 Esoterica podcast spots on feedspot.com. Check out the whole list at blog.feedspot.com/esoterica_podcasts for the whole list. Thanks to our friends at FeedSpot for this incredible honor. Welcome back to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. I am your host, Jana Stern. I am joined by one of my favorite human beings, a mentor, a friend, and a brilliant, brilliant creator, Shira Lazar. Shira, I am so excited that you are here. You are the founder of What's Trending. You are the co-founder of Peace Inside Live. You're the author of the newsletter, The Alpha. You are the founder and the creator of the Creator Spotlight. You do more things than anybody I know, and I'm so excited that you're here. Can you share with my listeners a little bit more about who you are and how you got into that stuff?
Yeah, well, I adore you. Thank you, Jana, for the kind words. And I like to say I don't have kids yet, so I think that's why I probably have all this time on my hands. Like, talk to me when I have a child. Like, we'll see. But I've been grateful that I've had the time to do all those things leading up to a possible child in the future. That said, yes, what was your question about how this all happened?
How did you get into the world of all of that stuff?
Yeah, on the content side, I mean, I came to LA after graduating college. I went to Emerson in Boston and studied communications. So I'm a student of the craft. It wasn't just like randomly stumbled into media. It was very intentional. Like, I wanted to be an actress when I was younger, and then I loved unscripted media after I kind of went into the audition process as an actor. I didn't like it at the time. I felt like unscripted was a way to be myself, but also perform. And I felt like I had more control because ultimately it was about me coming up with the content and the questions and all that, not relying on someone else, which is a consistent theme, I feel like, in my life, like not relying on people. Or like wanting to rely on people and then just being disappointed and then falling back into relying on myself. I'm like, I knew better. So I came up at a time in LA where you either went the traditional media route and, ended up getting a job from one of the very few, media outlets or channels, which is basically at the time E! Entertainment or MTV, which is hard to get, although I got close many times. Or you would do the local news route. And so the local news route, small towns, wasn't really for me. And while I was pursuing the possible big dream job, I was creating, my reel, and I was practicing. And as I was practicing, I started meeting a lot of folks who were coming up in this new digital space. And so I really found that exciting because I don't like waiting around. I guess I'm impatient.
No, you do not.
And so I was like, these are my people. These are just doing stuff, creating, And also because I think I grew up with entrepreneurs my whole life. I got these folks. A lot of those folks ended up being guys. And so I tended to be really good at dealing with men because I grew up with a lot of, again, men in business. And so it was kind of like the alignment of all things. And so I was very early to digital in LA, pre-YouTube, and started playing around with it with my personal brand. And then became a go-to person in LA for a lot of the websites as they came up, a lot of the apps. And again, what I like to say, maybe you've heard me say this before, what became, or what I thought was maybe a jumping off point to traditional became the thing, like became my career. And then from there, saw that there was something interesting, a gap in terms of interviewing people with a phone, which seems like duh now. When I talk about it, it seems like I'm really old. Like,
no, but at the time it was innovative. At the time it was, you're a dinosaur.
Yes,
go on.
Exactly. I'm a media dinosaur right now. So I started doing that. And then that's when I approached CBS News at the time. And there was someone that understood my vision and gave me the opportunity to be a vlogger at CBS News. And then that's where What's Trending was born, where we launched it with CBS News as a live weekly news show for social media generation, and then went off on our own. And so for the past decade or so, over a decade, since we launched in 2011, like do the math, and it's 2024. We've grown from a live streaming show to more of a digital media brand and property. And I've worked with major brands, and we were really one of the first to cover social media water cooler topics as the new news and interview influencers and creators. And so we've evolved into even covering pop culture ourselves. And I mean, again, social media is the new news. So it's like what makes us stand out now, where this is kind of the way people cover the news. And so we're always figuring that out, but it's a company that still runs. And then I guess you could say my work in the digital media space and the ups and downs of that, and entrepreneurship, and being in many ways a startup and not really having financing and doing it on my own, led me on my own mental health journey, because I was just, always hitting walls and obstacles as we do, but not having the tools to deal with it. And then falling into maybe bouts of depression or major anxiety as I was trying to manage all of this. And so I went on my own journey of figuring out how I can manage these things and manage my emotions and regulate and be more happy, because I just wasn't happy throughout a lot of this. It was a lot of my nervous system. And so that kind of happened pre-pandemic for me even, and led me to reconnecting with a longtime friend, Jordana Ream, who I ended up launching Peace Inside Live with during the pandemic. We went on a pretty life-changing trip in 2019 to Everest Base Camp, the base of Everest, but it was still a pretty intense trek. And that's where we started talking about, what would it be like if I started bringing the stuff I like to talk about behind the scenes to my content. And then when I got back, that was kind of the experiment, just starting to put myself out there more and being more vulnerable with what I was thinking about and going through. And then when the pandemic hit, she was in Thailand, I was in LA, and she did this virtual retreat that was really amazing to see at the time. Again, it's like, reminds me like when I'm talking about cell phones, like capturing video with cell phones, or like being on Zoom at the time. You're like, what? You could do this on Zoom? Like, this is so virtual. And so we launched the vision for Peace Inside Live in April of 2020 because we saw the need, and we knew so many facilitators who were willing to give their time and wanting to connect with people. And so it was donation based at the time. And then we evolved into more corporate wellness a year or two later. And then even when that post-pandemic kind of dried up, we all know that companies and communities want this, but again, not a lot of them want to put in the investment. And then, a lot of their health insurance and telehealth and HR kind of caught up and started establishing their own internal programs, which even though I feel like those have gaps, but then we had to pivot again. And now we're in this place where we've really leaned into kind of the intersection of two of my passions. And I feel like this is kind of, it was like these two things were happening, like had different, what's it called, streams, like they're parallel pathing. And then finally it took a few years, but they're converging. So the past few months, I would say this past year, really solidified that vision of, making it all make sense. The work I was doing with Peace Inside Live, and then my creator economy work. And so we've launched something called Creators for Mental Health to bring more mental health tools to the creator economy. And so we're doing pop-up events, trying to figure out, what we do with the community around that. And then, just like that's a big focus. It's a need, billion-dollar industry, built on the backs of creators who are all burnt out and confused and trying to figure it out. And so how can
Right.
we
And like,
be there for that community? Long
yeah,
and short of it.
I love it. It's such a complicated one because all the creators, they're, you're one of them, I'm one of them. The amount of work that falls on your shoulders to create even a 5-second reel, that can be hours and hours and hours of work. And you're ideating, you're creating it, you're editing it, you're like sitting with yourself and dealing with yourself alongside of it. And if your content goes a little bit deeper, even not a lot deeper, any kind of vulnerability, just putting yourself out there brings up anxiety. And so, yeah, as we move forward societally, and the only way to get yourself out there is to create content, having structures where mental health is in the foreground for people who have to be performing all the time. You need safe spaces to feel like a person, right?
Yeah, and feel heard and seen. And like we create all of us in such bubbles that a lot of times we might feel like I'm the only one going through this. And yes, your individual circumstance and you as an individual, you are the only person going through your lived experience in this very moment. But
Yes.
we're more common than we think, as we all know, and we're all experiencing parts of it that are similar. And so I think the more we can come together and just, as I say, shoot the shit, the more we can realize, oh, I'm not alone. Or, hey, thanks for this idea. Like, I'm dealing with this and someone might have a solution because they've experienced that. And it could be everything from actual mental health tools and support, or it might even just be someone giving you a tip to what they saw on Instagram or a platform that worked for them, because you spinning your wheels through that and not figuring it out creates mental health issues, right? It creates anxiety. It might make you depressed. You might think, what's wrong with me, right? All this stuff, because you just have no one to bounce those ideas off of, because we're all working alone. Like in the past, and whether this is a good thing or not, corporate spaces have its own cons and weaknesses, but sometimes what's great is when you're in that space and something's not working, you can go to someone and say, am I crazy? Or is this the right thing? And they might say, oh, actually, you should look at it in this way. Or actually, I tried that and yeah, I experienced the same thing. You're like, okay, good to know. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Or they might have a solution and we just don't have that. And so, yeah, like in many ways, it's everything from helping with like creator tools, like how to do what you do and make it easier and better, or tips and tricks, because that supports us when we find solutions. We're not like going in a circle, hamster on a wheel, because a lot of these platforms, they don't have customer service. They're not going to like help you. So we rely on each other in our community for that support.
And there's so much to know.
Exactly.
And you learn something, and as soon as you've mastered the platform, you're like, and there's 7 new platforms that are better than the one I've been using, and now I have to relearn how to use the one that I was using and throw all of that information that's in my brain away and start to learn something new. And the anxiety as I'm talking about it is already stirring up
and some
for
of
me.
it is kind of those basics, right? Like and staying on top of it if that's of interest and that's needed. But then if you like peel it back, it's about recognizing in life, like there's themes to this, that there's a lot out of our control. Things are happening outside of us, and understanding who we are and how we best work and what we need to support ourselves, knowing that that's the reality. So yeah, if you peel it back, like, yeah, of course, there's the concrete things that I mentioned, but then this is where more personal growth and self-awareness comes in, and personal accountability. So how do we make sure
what are those?
we have those tools at our disposal?
What are those creators for mental health events looking like? How do you show up? Like if I'm a creator, how do I show up? And what am I expecting at these kinds of events?
Yeah, and we're tweaking it as we go because we're learning ourselves. But yes, of course. But basically,
it's going to change as soon as you've executed it. It needs to change 100 ways, right?
So basically, the point is to bring together the creator community and to not just be a wellness space. We're not just about the cold plunge and having meditation and yoga, possibly, like all that, because there's a lot of amazing wellness events out there, which I love. But we really want to offer people up concrete tools, modalities that can support their mental health. And so part of that is, depending on the theme or how long it is, some of them could be happy hours or brunches, right? Or a dinner, or it could be a full day event where you get more. And so having some workshops around that, having some panel discussions with creators and mental health professionals around a certain theme. And then also on site, there will always be cool vendors to meet. So these are vendors, one, that as a creator, you might be able to collaborate with in the future, a brand to work with, which is so cool, that can support you. And it could be everything from in-kind or who knows, financially, maybe there's a relationship there, to nonprofits that are really doing the work. Like we had NAMI there in the past. We had a nonprofit in New York called Men Do Wellbeing, who helps people of color with mental health tools. And they're doing a lot of amazing research. To Shira, which helps with those with it's not like self-mutilation, but it's like that self-harm.
Self-harm.
Yeah. So we're really partnering, depending on what city we're in, with, I would say, vendors and nonprofits that are really doing the work that you could end up collaborating with and learning from and amplifying their work as well. And so
how cool.
There's, a lot of that where it's programming, there's experiences, and then there's individuals on site you can meet that are also, again, in the mental health and wellness space.
Incredible.
So yeah, that's it's not rocket science. Like I feel like we're not, it's like, oh, are we reinventing the wheel? Like we're not, but I would say, again, we're trying to make it so that you're not just going there and it's like we're using the word wellness as a way to get you in and doing all these wellnessy things. We have a very clear intention and goal, which is we know there's an issue. We know all of us within a certain arena and industry are having challenges. And how do we use each of the events to create action and create change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think an interesting thing, and I have seen this thread throughout much of what you create. I've been obviously very, very involved in some of your creations, is that, simple actually does serve to create the best execution because it will get complicated on its own. You are a person who is full of big, brilliant ideas and the complications will come. But if you are trying to reinvent the wheel, you're working too hard. And then those other sort of like spices and flavors can't get put in if you're trying to reinvent the wheel. Whereas if you are working with what you know works, then in comes the magic of you and Jordana, which I've seen in person. I've seen it in this guy, in the invention of this, that when the two of you guys come together and you bring your magics into a particular space, there really is a lot of incredible energy. And you do, guys, the two of you bring in unbelievable partners, brands, businesses. It's like really where your skill set is to collaborate everything and be like, let's not do this alone. Let's do this together so that you can feel supported in existing in this crazy world.
Yeah, exactly. It's curating these spaces intentionally. And again, partially, I think it's because I was not over, but I was just like, there's so many wellness events, which is, again, great. But then how do you create a space where people could feel like seen and heard, and that we're at least trying to like leave them with some tools to take back to themselves or their communities. And we're going to continue using that as the goal, right? The benchmark, where ultimately, when you think about the creator economy and mental health, we want people to think of creators for mental health. We want people to want to collaborate on an event where whatever city they live in. We want to be doing this in all the cities, collaborating with platforms, building out programs with platforms to support their creators. There's accelerators out there that support creators and building their channels and leveling up. But again, how are you integrating mental health into that? Because resilience and emotional regulation and your own leadership shifts how you create and how you approach what you create, right? So like this should be embedded in the foundation of this space and how we think about content creation. Like it shouldn't just be about like gaming the algorithm and here's a good, camera or lighting to use, but like again, have you thought about burnout? Have you thought about the best way you create, the timing? Do you have a morning and nighttime routine? Like, all this is really important to like how we live and exist as humans. And I think including in a world in a new space, this is going to be a growing industry where I think these issues that we have, including when we work anywhere or alone, are amplified. So it's really about, like saying that we are helping to build the foundation of this emerging industry and field. And we want to make sure that mental health is part of that.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
That's the goal. That's like the inspiration for me, because I, you know, from my own challenges, and not like, you know, by me or by us doing this, it's going to change someone's experience. Like everyone is going to learn on their own. Right. And so you can't cut corners for someone, right? You could say, I've experienced this and this is what I know helps me. But like ultimately someone will go through their own experience and journey, because that's what they get to do to learn. Right.
Right.
I mean, it's why a parent can give the wisdom to a child, but the child just needs to like experience it and live it, right? To learn. That said, I'm not necessarily everyone's mom, so hopefully they'll listen to me more. but you know, I think that's it. It's like if I was gonna like go look back at everything I've experienced and the people I cared about, some of them have experienced in the creator space, and we were so early, saying as like elders and people that have been through it, like what can I impart to the next generation, to those coming in? It's like this, because I've seen so many people hurt and practically not here because they didn't have those tools.
Sure. I imagine that there have been lots of creators who have quit the business and also perhaps hit like rock bottoms and had, you know, these experiences of like, can't do this anymore, can't keep pushing at this rate because there's nothing left in my cup. And, you know, I think now that the existence of humanity especially in the West, but really in the world, if you want to do literally anything, you need to create content about it. And there's a lot of pressure on that, and a lot of pressure to be a person, to, you know, deal with dynamics of people as they're also coming to their own awarenesses and their own sort of awakenings, and tapping into their own feelings, their own experiences, their traumas, their dramas, and how they can unpack all of that. And now that we're in a world post-pandemic where everybody's like, okay, here's all my stuff, and you're like, I just met you. You know, we need spaces where we can feel that collectively, as we're still pushing out this content and trying, for many of us, to put out content that is meaningful, that makes a difference, that's also engaging and entertaining, to just feel like you're not alone in the suffering that comes with that, because it's not pleasant.
I'd say the uncertainty, basically, which then breeds suffering, because ultimately, and the feeling, a lot of maybe us feeling, I don't want to project here, but like maybe you're seeing the success porn on Instagram or any social platform. Like there is real success porn.
I love that.
And feeling like, why can't I figure it out? And that makes you feel worse about yourself.
Sure does.
And so how do you manage that there will always be that success porn around you, but then while staying true to yourself and taking things at your own pace?
Yeah, you're really good at that. You're really good at just being like, I am where I am, and I'm going to go with the pace that I'm
I just try to figure out solutions, right? And brainstorm, like ask people what they're doing. And then some things might resonate, some things might not, right? And so like I always say, if I'm going in circles around something and like, is something working? Like, okay, what's in my control? What can I play around with? Are there strategies I'm not doing right now? What might make sense for me? And like having that brainstorm, you know, even with myself, it could be every few weeks, once a month. Some people might look at a quarter. Look at things like data also, because a lot of our brands are very personal to us. So we take it personally. But if you also look at it, okay, well, I'm going to look at myself as a business. I'm going to start looking at the data. I'm going to start approaching it like I would approach someone else's business if I was helping them. Or maybe my own, even if it wasn't called Jana or Shira, right? So that was a shift for me when I started saying, okay, well, where are my weaknesses now? well, I have a ton of anxiety when I post because I overthink everything. And then it causes me to delay my posting, or I'm stuck in meetings and I have a hard time being present to doing all this stuff. I'm going to get some support. I'm going to get someone to assist me, and that will help.
Right.
And that has been huge for me to bounce ideas off of, like a social media manager support to upload for me. So I'm not overthinking it, knowing what that is for you. Not all people have that. Some people don't need that. I recognize like, what do you need to take it there? And then working with her to say, okay, let's look at what worked and what didn't this month or whatever. And then have that recap call every month. And then what are we seeing that is trending? What are we seeing out there as formats? Could we try something? And if I try something, when am I going to do it? Is there a date I'm going to put in my calendar to shoot that? When are we going to post it? So really organizing it like you would if you were a consultant to someone else, or if you had a client. We tend to though not approach ourselves like that for some reason, because we think it should be easier or something like, but it should be easier. But like, no, you're a company, you're a brand, be your own consultant.
Right. Right. And I actually don't think it's supposed to be easy. I think it was like, there are so many moving pieces to it that it would be impossible to do all of it on your own. And if you are a creator or just a human who is doing it all on your own, we need community, we need support, we need to know what our strengths and our weaknesses are, and then play to our strengths and ask for support with weaknesses. It's all the same thing, right? So if you're a solo person out there in the world making content, creating things and trying to be better, get whatever supports that might be. That might just be a therapist. It might just be like,
I'm having a really hard time just with the uncertainty. Yeah, I have a therapist too. Who knows what it would be for you? It might be an editor. It might be a social media manager. It might just be an assistant. Like, what is that thing that is
causing a friend to shoot with?
What is causing you anguish? What is causing you anxiety? What is not bringing you joy? And instead of saying, well, then this whole thing isn't for me, saying, what's the solution to that piece? Because sometimes by solving that one piece, it all starts to make sense and it's more enjoyable. We tend to look at the whole thing and we like get very dramatic about it. Like, this is just all not working. You're like, one step at a time. Okay, what in this? Like, let's just go like bird's eye view. What are you not enjoying? Well, everything. No, just let's step back, right?
Yeah. Say one thing that's solvable.
Okay.
Right. So, for me, it was editing. I was like, I can't edit this podcast anymore. I can't do it. And so I hired editors, and shout out to my team. They're the greatest. I love them. Thank you. If you need a podcast editor, slide on into my DMs. I'll send you my guys.
Amazing.
They're the best. And it's relatively inexpensive. It's an investment for me that made sense, that I was like, I would rather pay somebody than stress and spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours editing and hating the sound of my voice, hating listening to the same thing over and over again. I was like, this is not fun. I love recording and I love putting the episodes out there. And there's this middle part that I detest. Better hire somebody to do it for me. So, and thankfully I'm able in my business to do that. And I feel grateful and all of those things. I want to know what you think AI, because this is a big part of your business. You talk a lot about AI and the tech, and I know you're heavily involved in many different kinds of tech companies and the evolution of tech, and you talk a lot about AI in the Alpha every week. I'm curious what you think what role it will play as we kind of build this creator economy and sort of do less, but also have to do a lot more. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I'm a proponent because it's not going away. And so
that's right.
I'm also a tech optimist. Well, I think that we get to have skepticism and get to call these companies forth. But
I would say that you're a life optimist, and this just goes under
I try to
umbrella.
Be. But I do see that there are nuances to this that we need to look out for. We can't just approach it blind, right? And partially that is being wary of the companies and platforms you use. And if you're going to use it, just use it at your own risk, right? Like, look at the conditions and the, what you're opting in for. Sometimes you could even use AI to ask, like, is this okay? Or what does this actually mean? Is there anything to look out for? If you're not cool with it, then don't use it. right? And so I think though, as a creator, and a lot of us are solopreneurs, it's the ability to do more in a more efficient way. And also to get a thought assistant, right? Someone to bounce those ideas off of, to edit what we're doing, right? What would have taken me a long time, not just because the work took a long time, but because I almost was my own worst enemy in it, questioning myself, being my own imposter. I now can use AI to validate what I'm doing. And actually, it's given me more confidence that what I'm doing makes sense and works. And so for me, like, that's how I'm using AI. I think, there's tools for voiceover, which I think are great, as long as, I'm not into someone just taking my voice and me not getting the money back from it. However, the reality is, and this is kind of unfortunate, and what I think we're all trying to figure out is, if who we are is already in the public domain and the way it is, it can be pulled from. And we still need to be having these conversations, though, to ask these companies, like, how are you pulling from, where are you pulling from? But then even deeper, if they are pulling from YouTube, and great, YouTube does a deal with an OpenAI, or Reddit does a deal, or I don't know, then even those platforms, how are they compensating users? So these are like things that we don't know the answer to. I mean, licensing deals are happening already, but the trickle down isn't necessarily, it's not clear how it impacts the people that are contributing to those platforms. And so again, we need to be asking these questions and calling people forth. Do I know what that looks like? Does it look like a legal matter yet? Perhaps in the future? Does it look like publicly having these discussions on social so that they feel the pressure? Perhaps too. Those are things that are top of mind for me. But again, I think as a creator, whether it be on the, the writing, editing side, doing the voiceover if I don't have the right equipment, but knowing my voice is in a platform, like I've used 11 Labs, which is a really interesting tool. Not perfect. Some of these are not perfect. I've used Opus in the past to cut down my videos, right? To give me those social clips, because it's like a quick and easy way to do it. It's not perfect, but it helps. It gives me some direction, including when I'm working alone and I'm overwhelmed. And I just want to, make sure, like, can you help me just like make sure I'm in the right direction? Yeah. So all those things help. And it's going to make us better creators. I think on the other side of it, it's going to create a bit of a McDonald's creator. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of McDonald's content, right? Where it's like fast food, fast content, banging it out. We're going to try to create as much content as possible. Like, and then of course, you're not sure what is real, what is not, which is going to make the people that are real, that are actually producing content, make sure they're leaning into their authenticity as much as possible, and their credibility and their expertise and their lived experience, which you could say is a challenge, but it's also a beautiful challenge to really like lean into who you are.
That's what I've been saying about AI too.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's going to create the difference between, and this is, by the way, like Pluto transgressing and transiting into Aquarius.
Yes.
The question is going to be, what is humanity? What is it to be human? Transhumanism. And so, dropping in deeper and deeper and deeper to your own personal mental well-being, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, all of those things matter, because there will be bots pretending to be people, and we need to be able to discern what's real and what's not in the way of human. And that will only happen if you're being real with yourself,
Yeah, and the importance of IRL events and seeing people offline. People could tell who you are, what you stand for.
Right.
I'm going to connect more with that. I'm more likely to maybe follow you or buy from you if I've seen you in person.
And also do the opposite, right? If you meet somebody and you're like, oh, that's not what I expected from this creator.
Yes.
Then
so that's the thing, is like,
they fall away.
You could kill it on social, this, that. But if you are totally different when people meet you IRL, that is weird, right? And cringy. And I think there'll be repercussions because of that. But then again, it might be, if you don't see someone IRL ever, you might question, is that a real person?
Sure. And like, it's interesting in this world where we're starting to really change our dynamic to celebrity. I mean, you've been very connected to many celebrities for many years through, interviewing and all of that kind of stuff on what's trending. But, as we're starting to really like reformulate, what is celebrity? What are the celebrities doing? What is going on? What's worth giving my energy and attention to? Where do I need to redirect? It's really interesting to see that there may be some of these AI, and I'm going to use like air quotes, like celebrities that will come forward. And I'm curious to see which of them, succeed and how other real authentic creators see or don't see growth, expansion, all of that kind of stuff around that as AI kind of like builds so fast. You talk about this like McDonald's content, like AI is already doing it.
Yeah, well, exactly. You're never going to compete against a machine in that way,
Right.
but you can compete, or is it not even compete? You can exist, in that you're leaning into, again, who you are and what you want to bring to the world and constantly reflecting on that. Right. So it's like we need to stop talking about the compare and contrast and saying, okay, who am I and what can I take from this and what can I leave? And again, what do I want to share with the world? What matters to me? That's basically it. Because, way back, this isn't the first time there's been AI or influencers. There's been digital AI influencers or whatever for years. And oddly enough, because the tools weren't there to make it easy to create, not a lot of people did it. Now a lot of people are doing it, but unfortunately, I feel like it's more used as a bot possibly, or on the not sexual side, but there's a lot of, and women, I would say, are being taken advantage and sexualized. No surprise. The fetish around female AI influencers to then bring people to maybe somewhere else where they can monetize. And like a lot of catfishing probably happening too. And so I think there will be industries that are more impacted by it. And also for advertising, listen, influencers and creators make money off brands. And so you'll have a lot of brands maybe working with AI influencers. They could customize, they could do whatever. But I even think we'll start judging those brands who do that. They'll be like the Shein and Temu's. Like, you know what I mean? Like they will be the ones where we right now we look at companies that make their stuff out of China and don't pay people properly. Those will be the brands that work with AI influencers will be looked at like that. And there will be people that don't care. Great.
Sure.
Companies doing this. I like their stuff. It's cheap. It's easy. And then in terms of the sustainability space and actually supporting brands that we feel are authentic and ethical, those will be the brands that say, oh, well, we invest more in doing the right thing. We want to work with humans. We want to support the economy. We recognize that using, AI models is problematic because we're actually not supporting someone. We're just using people as objectifying people and objectifying and even representation. So I do think these are going to be all these ways we look at this and the mindset around it.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating thing to think about where we'll be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 25 years. You talk about when you started, your YouTube journey so many years ago and feeling like a dinosaur. I know that all this conversation will look back and be like, whoa.
But, here's the thing is the way the media is, we're going through a rough period and there are a lot of expectations in order to monetize, even as an individual creator.
Sure.
And so there is that balance of, how can we each show up and make it happen for ourselves? And we can finally do it using these tools because in the end, otherwise, a lot of us independents can't exist. The amount of resources it takes to keep up with the minimums for anything like this, as a digital media brand, whether it be the amount of posts you post on a website, right? Or the amount of posts on social media or what you get to do, it is so hard to keep up. And the thing is, we can't just rely on traditional legacy brands, huge companies that have, to rule, because then there's not competition, there's not diversity, and that's boring, right? So if these tools will allow some of us to continue existing and sustaining as small companies, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
To the ecosystem.
to humanity.
Yeah, to humanity,
which is
or else
who we're
again,
really trying
the only
to-
people that can exist are Amazons and Googles and these big companies. And so we don't necessarily want that. We don't want them to go away because they employ a lot of people, but then we also want innovation to happen from the bottom and move it up, right? And the only way that can happen is through technology, really, and this type of disruption. And enabling a lot of us to not just survive, but thrive. And what do we need to do that? We need easier ways to do what we do and do it better.
And like, frankly, all of those people who are employed at a lot of those companies, they're not living their best lives. They're not living, in ways that are, abundant and any of that stuff. Many of them are working to the bone. They're working terrible hours. And so AI can come in and, quote, take their jobs and then, give them the opportunity, like, okay, well, then what's your magic? What's your gift? What's your purpose? What do you really want to do in this reality? Because it doesn't have to be, loading things from the warehouse into a box. Let the AI do that. And then let's move into your gift, your magic, your own specialness,
Yeah, I think that's a difficult one because a lot of the places, where these companies employ people, again, we don't live there. I'm not going to speak for their lived experience and the feeling that, what that's like living in the middle of nowhere or in a small town, right? Where this is the only option. My hope is that there's some support and education to help people, guide them to figuring out how to find opportunities in this new era, right? Like that is the hope. And whether it be institutions, big companies, government, I mean, there needs to be some support. I would love to say they're self-starters like me and you. Like that's what I want to share with people. So they're equipped as individuals for this new time we're in. But my hope is that we also that these companies that have a lot of money, or again, the government is thinking about this too.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
I mean, that's partially why I'm an advocate, but I would love to be working more on the policy side or government, to be thinking about this. Again, we can't rely on the government for everything. And we know everyone's like, oh, corrupt, this, that. But guess what? There's still reason why our streets are paved. There are lights out.
Yep. Yeah. They do some things. Yeah, they do some things.
And I do believe we get to ask for these things too, because other places that are moving much faster ahead than us, well, you're in Canada, but even in the US, are getting their citizens ready for this change. And they're investing in, again, education. They're funding new companies. They're funding new ideas. We get to have that too. Instead of, again, just holding on to what used to work. Because guess what? That's not going to help all of us. Let's make sure things don't, you don't want to move the ship right away, right? You want to do it slowly. Yeah. It's moving. The train has left the station.
Yeah.
And so, again, you will be left behind. So work on closing this up and still take advantage of the opportunities you have in the industry that you're in and what's happening, but be open to what's ahead.
Yeah, I think that's, the only way to keep going and surviving here, because like you said in the beginning, it's really not going anywhere. It's coming whether we like it or not. And so learning to be friends with it and work with it in ways that do alleviate some stress and anxiety and give us this opportunity to live a little bit more confidently, a little bit more easefully. In my sort of utopian future where AI does all the work and I just get to dance in the jungle every day and create what I want to create.
Yeah, no, I love sleeping in. My ideal day, I like sleeping in. I like meditating, doing some physical activity. Yeah. If I have a child, you want to be with your family, you want to be with your dog.
Yeah.
And then being able to wake up and just say, okay, this is everything, Shira, you need to catch up on. From your accounts, this is what you should post, me tweaking it, maybe spending an hour or two tweaking things to my liking. Hopefully it gets to the point where I don't need to micromanage, just like if I hired someone, put it out there come back in the middle of the day, check in on some things, and still be making the same amount of money or more than I'm making now. Wouldn't that be great?
Wouldn't it?
It'd be amazing.
Wouldn't it be great?
Or like, your company, right now, companies don't provide assistants, but imagine everyone providing an AI assistant. And so they're like, these are the meetings you need to be in person at. We need you. These are the ones you could send your assistant to. As long as these are these are the goals and what results you need to hit. Otherwise, we are not micromanaging you. You do it and hit those goals in the way that feels good for you based on how you work.
Right. That's, to me, what I think AI offers us societally, is that you can step back a little bit, and have a little bit more autonomy and sovereignty and just like freedom to exist in a way that doesn't feel full of this like capitalistic pressure to keep go, which creates anxiety and deep mental health issues and like all of these other things. One of the solutions that I know you and Jordana, which, by the way, I want to say, and I'm going to post it in the show notes, Jordana was on this podcast, so you guys can listen to that episode. It is, I'll post it down below. But yeah, you guys co-created the JOMO journal. Do you want to chat a little bit to us about kind of all of the things JOMO and... I obviously know quite a bit, but
you were a big collaborator on it as well. So a shout out. But yeah, JOMO, Joy of Missing Out, is an antidote to FOMO, the fear of missing out, which a lot of us experience. And it was this idea of using this modern day saying as an entryway to mindfulness and to connecting with ourselves and connecting with our value systems and what really brings us joy. And in connecting with that, we can better choose and opt into what we want in our lives, including with all the noise and all the options. And so we do that within the JOMO journal through journaling, which has been a way me and Jordana have loved to process and to, live. Like I'm an avid journaler. And so for me, I personally always wanted to create a journal, and Jordana's had another meditation book / journal. And so we thought this would be a fun thing to do together with the industry that we were presenting in, like in tech, and we were seeing so much FOMO, and also the events. When we were facilitating at events, we would a lot of times ask people and prompt people to write something down, their takeaway, what was coming up. And so we thought we'd create a journal out of it. And so in it are morning and nighttime prompts that really help you with that, help you figure out like, what is one thing I will choose joy in doing today, which I love, or what is one thing that I will joyously choose not to do today. And so all these things help you and your brain redirect intentionally. Right. Because our brain, as we know, is a muscle that will listen to us and is very powerful and will listen to the positives of us or the negatives of us as a guide. And so we typically default to a negative, and this isn't like, this is me too. We, as humans, we default. And I don't know if Jordana mentioned this, but this is like the go-to stat, which is 85% of our thoughts are negative, or 80% or so, and 95% on repeat. This is who we are naturally as humans. And so really when you talk about the inner work, it's about the muscle that needs to be built to default to a more positive outlook or reframe things. It doesn't mean you're always like la-di-da positive. We talk about toxic positivity, but it means like you're aware of what comes up from something that might be a negative feeling, which is fine. It's fine to feel that and accept that. And then it's saying, okay, well, is there something positive, or what's the joy in this, right? What's the lesson? Right. How do I reframe this? And in many ways it's a muscle and a reframe that you need to work on daily. And I find, again, starting the day off with that supports the rest of the day, and then ending the day with that helps you wrap up the narrative of the day and of your life as you move and sleep and move into the next day, and your brain is repairing itself and choosing what memories and stories it wants to keep and which ones it's going to throw out.
Right.
If you end the day with negative thoughts or fear and all that, typically you're tossing and turning and you don't sleep well. And
then you start the next day that day.
Exactly.
That way.
It's a constant cycle. So it's about intervening in that cycle.
How beautiful. This This journal is, it has so much of my heart.
I know. And so we have this prompts, we have art. So all of it is science-backed tools, which gratitude is part of that. Part of the reframing is thinking about gratitude. We have, art from artists that were part of our campaign where we raised money for mental health charities, really beautiful art and NFT art, and quotes. And then your ability to draw if you are so inclined, because there's art therapy. I mean, I tried drawing in one of them. I typically use that space to write more, but and I drew one day I drew and it looked like literally like a child drew something. It was like, this is embarrassing. Anyway, but drawing helps, expressing yourself.
Well, one of the artists in here, Lisa Manton, who also has an episode on this podcast, she and I often would say to one another, make bad art. Because it doesn't really matter if you're making good art, just make bad art. So if it looks like a kid drew it,
yes,
cool.
No, exactly. This is not meant to encourage judgment. It's meant to encourage like more freedom and like being kind to your judging voice. But it was hard not to judge what I drew. I was just, even as I drew it, I was like, girl, like, come on. Like, at least I think that if I had some colors, like get some markers and colors, because drawing with pen and including if it ends up being like really messy, it just looks weird.
What did you draw out of curiosity?
I was trying to draw a plane. And it just looked like I was like, why can't I draw a plane? Anyway.
I don't know. You spend half your life on an airplane. If you can't draw an airplane, you can't draw, babe. I'm so sorry.
I think if I had to, I'm a visual drawer, so I would have to have it like in front of me. At any rate, this isn't about me, and my drawing skills. But yeah, so we have a lot of fun with that. And for me, to be fair, like, and to be real, I didn't just create this and we didn't create it just for other people. Like, this is something that I use myself. When I feel like I'm starting to get into that spiral of thinking negative thoughts and defaulting to the negative, I know I need to re-up on that muscle. And typically that is, getting enough sleep, hydration, the basics like working out, these mental health, positive coping strategies, but then also journaling. And not just journaling. I tend to do stream of consciousness journaling, just like, but gratitude lists and really like intentional prompts that help support my brain coming back.
Yeah. And I do know that you guys are really big on making sure that things are science backed and that there's like proof to what you're doing actually working instead of all of the like love and light woo-woo
Which I'm
stuff,
down for that too.
Here, but we also, exactly. But a time and place. Shira, this has been fantastic. I wonder if there's anything that you wish to share with my listeners before we kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah, just you could follow me everywhere, sign up for my newsletter, check out everything that Jana was saying, my journal, creator spotlight, creator interview series, what's trending at Shira Lazar is where you could find me everywhere to find all those things.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to all of our listeners. We will be back in another couple of weeks with another episode. And in the meantime, just take care of yourselves. Thanks for listening to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. You can follow along with us on Instagram at I'm Really Into That Stuff or on Twitter at That Stuff Pod. And be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. If this episode resonated with you and something that you're really into, share it with someone you love. Sending you strength, peace, love, and light until our next episode.